Hello and welcome. My name's Brian with Work to Game. It's been a roller coaster of a year for Final Fantasy XIV. So just how well did this game do in 2017? Let's discuss in this year's Final Fantasy XIV Year in Review. So just a quick note, this comes from a longtime fan of the series and a longtime fan of this game. I've played since version 1.0, so needless to say that I have maybe a little bit of a bias here, but I'm going to let you be the judge. It's also important to note that this might contain some minor spoilers when talking about the story, so consider yourself warned when we start talking about the story specifically. Now, Final Fantasy XIV is my MMO of choice. If you were to ask me if you should start playing this game today, I would respond enthusiastically, yes. You should, and you should bring your friends with you. This game, as well as any MMO, are at their best when you can play with your friends, or even make new ones in the game. And 2017 dropped the expansion Stormblood. Any expansion year brings a lot of highs and lows, and this year was no exception. So to catch you up, we scored this game over the course of a whole year. This would include patch 3.5, 4.0, and 4.1 content, along with a few categories such as social features, gear, story, gameplay and content, quality of life, and overall thoughts of Final Fantasy XIV in 2017. At the end of the day, I hope you enjoy this video, and if you're on the fence about playing this game, I'd recommend you check out the free trial, as you can play up to level 35 for free without having a subscription or having to buy the game. And if you find yourself having trouble, please check out any of our guides on different topics. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into social features. Social features seem to be ignored over and over again. I said this in 2016, it remains true in 2017. However, at the same time, they have added cross-world party finder and friends lists and tells. They talk about even in 2018 more features coming to this cross-world system. The cross-world party system is really the highlight of 2017. By far. However, this still isn't perfect. These link shells have long been ignored. Free companies seem long ignored, with features that would really help bring the company together, run and manage and communicate with your free company. They've talked about having a mobile app that allows us to help communicate with our friends in-game, even if we're not logged in, and the fact of its delay still seems to kind of haunt this game. So we're left waiting and wanting more. The social features of this game, being the cross-world, is fantastic, but just the sheer lack of indifference or just not focused as a priority really leaves me ranking social features as a C for the overall year. This would be much lower if we did not have the cross-world party finder system, so at least that brings it up and raises its grade to at least an average. So all in all, the features we do have are okay, but we've long needed updates. The glamour system obviously fully negates any major complaint that you can have with the gear in this game, but looking at what has been introduced, we really see some nice pieces. However, I'm still left wanting more. One of the really cool things about gear as a part of this year specifically is obviously with 3.5 and Stormblood concluding, you had kind of the highest tier gear at level 270, and it looked really good. I actually was more of a fan of the 270, 260, 270 gear than I was any of the previous iterations as a part of Heavensward. And since that was at the beginning of this year, I was really pleased with it, especially with the PvP gear that they introduced at the beginning of this year. As we go into Stormblood and as we go into the end game in 4.1 of Stormblood, I kind of have I'm still left with the feeling that I had with Heavensward. It's just, okay. Now, they did do a competition, and those designs actually got put into the game, and these pieces look really, really cool. But at the end of the day, I find myself still wanting more and more options. The leveling versions of this gear, it leaves something to be desired, and it really actually, I guess, puts a lot of pressure on the fact that the glamour system, the way that it's currently designed, is lacking. And so that actually ended up being a bigger thing. I ended up changing my gear, and because of the glamours and wanting to have the gear that I liked how it looked applied back to that, it was a big hassle. Now the good news is that in 2018 they're going to be changing and updating that, and they showed that off recently. So I'm really excited. I think we're going to be starting off 2018 on a really good foot. But overall for gear, I'm going to just have to give this a B-. Not necessarily knocking any particular set of gear. I'm enjoying it, but there's nothing that really just has that desire for me to go and spend a lot of time grinding. Maybe there's a piece out there that you would definitely highlight, but for me, I'm still in love with the higher end gear that I've already collected, and that's why I really need to see some improvements overall to the glamour system. We talked about in gear that does really fall more into a quality of life update, but because they're so tightly related, I want to address that here. Okay, so gameplay. How is the gameplay and content of Stormblood, of patch 4.1, and even of the final patch of 3.5? And this is where things get tricky. Obviously, Samurai and Red Mage are really awesome. The changes to Paladin that they've done have been fantastic. The changes to the tanks and to the healers and the adjustments that they've made, something's shocking, something's not. We can get and talk about specific adjustments all day long, but I have a great respect for the amount of effort that they put into these changes, and also with PvP. They've put a lot of time and effort into not just redesigning the battle system, but introducing a whole new PvP mode. This has been fantastic. Now, depending on where you fall in the year, if you've played as much of this game as I had, you might be sitting here going, well, I've done everything. And that's fair, and that, I understand that argument in and of itself, but for the most part, 3.5 and Stormblood 4.0 itself delivered on a wealth of gameplay updates, a wealth of content and dungeons, and then even finished that off into 4.1. Now, there is a negative to be discussed here, and that's just that there is a desire among the community for more. We have been told that we are losing certain things, and then because of that, we're getting certain things. And we are starting to see that within 2017. And to be fair, while the year is an expansion year, the updates themselves can, be delayed. Features can get moved from one patch to another. A good case and example of this is Eureka, now scheduled for 4.25, which is going to be sometime in early 2018. These updates and delays, no matter who you are, can really, I guess sometimes bum you out. But the good news is that they're listening, they're responding, and there's a lot more to come. And I think 2018, you're going to see the gameplay take center stage. We're going to see a lot of content here. But as it exists for 2017, I played a ton of this. I can easily give this category an A. Obviously, I'm always going to want more. There's always the desire for more dungeons, more raids, and everything. But all the things that I've played, I have enjoyed. I've enjoyed the challenge. I've enjoyed the difficulty. It seems to be tuned really well for the beginner, for the mid-core, and even now with the Hyper and Ultimate Bahamut, there is this really hardcore challenge that is really actually more interesting to watch. So not all content in this game is going to be made for you specifically. Maybe it is, but there's just a wealth of things to try and do, and hopefully you find your groove. Alright, so now let's talk about quality of life. 2017 was huge in this department. We talked about the Crosswar Party Finder. We talked about some updates that they have planned for 2018, but when it comes to things like group pose, your HUD, the consolidation of actions and the auto upgrade of actions, there has been a lot of quality of life here. Even 4.1 was, humorously labeled Storm HUD because of all the major changes. Now, this can also be largely contributed to the fact that the PS3 support ended with the launch of 4.0, but we've only just begun to scrape the surface of what is possible now that those requirements are no longer in place. Now, for me personally, the double cross hotbar, the consolidation of actions, as a controller player, I find this to be very comfortable, and I approve of all of these changes that they've made. Sure, I'm always going to want more, but quality of life has gone up and up and up. It's not there, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's always going to be in that, I really wish they did X. The nice thing is that they're listening, they're learning, and there's so much really cool stuff that they've talked about to come, and we already somewhat talked about the glamour system updates. So with that, again, confidently, I'm going to go ahead and give this a B. I don't think you'll ever see this to be perfect. I don't think there's ever going to be the year of quality of life that's going to ever put this into the A. It's B, it's better than average, it keeps improving, and that's what I want to see from the development team. That's what I want to see as the game progresses and develops. Not only are we getting good content, but the game just helps to make systems easier and more enjoyable. That, encourages me to spend more time with the game. Okay, again, just a reminder, when we talk about story, minor spoiler alert possibility. Depends on what you've seen, what you know, and how much you care. Again, we're not going to go into the massive story and all the lore that's going on behind it, but I want to be able to give you my review for 3.5, 4.0, and 4.1 story-wise. Now, looking over the course of the year, 3.5 and 4.0, easily an A+. Starting right out, I love the story. I'm really connected into this world. I really felt like with 3.5, we just didn't have a satisfying villain. I get Ilbert's, drive. I get, what he was trying to accomplish. I talked about that even earlier this year, that I don't like how sometimes that the villains themselves give themselves a tell. I know they're doing that for, a cinematography approach so that you can see who's good and who's bad. But from Ilbert's perspective, he's the good guy and he achieves his goal. He puts us at odds, obviously, with the Empire, and that's exactly what we want. That's where we want to go. That's where we need to go, and we've delayed it for so long. And then that brings us to 4.0 Stormblood, these areas that we've talked about, that we wanted to see and experience, and we finally get to go in and dive into these beautiful, beautiful areas. And then we get a villain that we really needed for a long time. Xenos is a villain who delivered. The fact that we finished him off, obviously the end of the story, is a bit underwhelming and disappointing, but the revelations when it comes to summons, the mystery behind the Echo, all these things continue to expand and build on one another that has me excited and always waiting for more. Then we get into 4.1. This story moved me so much. The character development was some of the best that I've seen. I am so interested to see how these characters play out. The tragic backstories, the interesting, politics behind it all. What should we do? Should I serve my country or serve my friends? And how that all comes together. I was really moved by the 4.1 story. Then the tying in with Ivalice. You can't ask for anything more. At least I can't. This is exactly like my dream and what I've dreamt for Final Fantasy XIV. Again, like with anything, I'm always going to want more. So I really felt the story delivered, and it really sets itself up. I can't wait to see where we go with it. I just want to find more reasons to stay more engaged with the world itself. I don't know if that means more side quest or more, voice acting. Actually, I think I would have to say that I want to see more voice acting. I think people find when you have these voice acted cutscenes and then you shift to these non-voice acted cutscenes, it's a little jarring. I get there's probably a better or longer term development that would have to be applied to put in more voice acting. So I don't know where I fall with it. I guess at the end of the day, looking at the whole year, I loved how the primals they have are voiced, but then you have Omega and he's not. But then you have the Ivalice raid and it is, and it's just like there just seems to be a weird bit of consistency with that. And that kind of falls into story because it is about that presentation, but I'll let it be, what it is for you. I easily give the whole year an A. It just felt like there were these long gaps, and as there always is. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I hope you have too, and hopefully I haven't spoiled too much for you if you haven't gotten there already. Okay, so overall thoughts. If you haven't gathered it by now, I'm going to easily give this whole year a B+. It's a tough score, but I think a fair score when it all comes down to it. We've had some issues with balance. We've had some gaps between, long gaps between, and this is really kind of leading from 3.5 to 4.0 in content. And then they flood us with so much content, it's really exciting. But there's still missteps along the way. We talked briefly about PvP, and I'm a big fan of it. The changes they've done are great, but there's quality of life stuff that has to happen. And they keep talking about it, and it looks like a lot of this stuff is going to fall in early 2018. 2018 already seems to be a magical year in terms of content that they've talked about, and maybe it's my excitement building is why I've referenced it so much in this video. But I have to say there's still things that I want and I would have expected to have by now. It doesn't hurt the overall experience, it just slows the overall enjoyment. There's a lot of really great games, and so when it comes time to, do I want to go ahead and just grind out that extra eye level or play something else, there's a tough choice to be made in that, because it doesn't necessarily really apply unless you're doing the hyper end hardcore, and then it becomes irrelevant with that next patch. And so The game in and of itself has some things that it really needs to address. It needs to address some incentivizing issues. It needs to address the tanking and the queues, and there's always things that it's going to need to do. This is a game that's this persistent world. It's this, obviously gaming as a service. And with that though, again, I would say a B+ is a very good score for the whole year. They've got some really high notes. They've really hit those. And it's really interesting to see some of the interesting ways that they're exploring and try to bring in new and additional things to the game that I even didn't expect. And then all of a sudden they deliver it, and I'm excited by it, etc. I guess at the end of the day, what I'm really looking for is what is that next big hook that really gets me excited to play this game hour on end. Last year I talked about the Wondrous Tales, and while that system is still great, and it's actually a really great system, especially for encouraging you to go back and run content, whether it's synced or unsynced, just to get additional clears and the option for more gear or things to sell. So the value there is great. But I didn't find that in 2017. I didn't find my Wondrous Tales the thing that really excited me for the whole year. The one just surprising feature, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at here. Anyway, that wraps it up for me. Overall, B+, lots of high notes, a few down notes as well, but for the most part, this has been a stellar year for Final Fantasy XIV. Hopefully, whether or not you're playing or you're on the fence about this game, that you're checking it out, you're watching it, and you'll either come back or you'll jump in. It's well worth your time, but again, like I said, bring a friend. You're going to have way more fun than playing alone. Anyway, guys, for Work to Game, my name's Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video, and we hope to see you in our next. But until then, I hope you have a fantastic year. Take care.